Hello everyone, I've been dragged out of retirement to review another complete heap of a car because I know how much you guys enjoyed my Peugeot 307 review, and when I saw this car, well, I just couldn't pass up the opportunity to share it with you on the channel, particularly as I've bought it. I'm on the hunt for a new, cheap and reasonably economical daily, and I also want something that's going to be a relatively nice place to be. Now, when you think of nice places to be, surely at the top of the list should be Mercedes Benz. Now, I've never actually owned a Mercedes Benz before, and generally speaking, I'm not a fan of them. I can tell you my favourite one quite easily, that's the CLK DTM, but as I seem to be missing the £250,000, I think I need to buy one of those, and the last time I checked it wasn't that economical either. That's kind of out of the running. In fact, I have a much more modest budget. In fact, this car right behind me cost me the princely sum of 300 of your Earth pounds. Let's take a look at it. Ta-da! It is a 2002 C200 compressor. It's a 2-litre inline 4-cylinder supercharged hunk of German superiority. I mean, just look at this race-inspired, sleek body. Now, this car has serious competition provenance. In fact, this has just completed one of my scrappage rally events, which means that it has done 2,500 miles around Europe. And I had a brief go in it, and after that, I knew this is going to be my next fun little daily. We're going to be selling the Honda because, well, we need to sell that. And this is going to be replacing that. It's actually really quite fun to drive, and I'll take it out in a minute. But before I do, I want to talk you through some of the car's features. Now, you'll have seen the fact that it comes with the full AMG Petronas F1 livery, a really great addition. Now, if you come a little bit closer, you'll see that the bodywork isn't perfect. There is some minor bubbling to the car, going all the way round. Wheels are alloys, best described as crusty. Now I'll do the obligatory cheap car tyre check, because this thing doesn't grip a lot. I apologise also, by the way, for the wind noise, but as you can see, it's a nice bright clear day and there is nowhere for miles that we can film without a bit of wind at the minute, so just put up with it, I'm afraid. Auto grips at the front, great well-known brand tyre. At the back we got a Rotala, another brand I've never bloody heard of in my life. Around here, have we got? Oh, we got a matching Rotala here, and wow, I don't believe it. We actually have only the 2 brands of tyre on this car, and they've got tread. They're just useless. We're also standing, it seems, in a undiscovered chalk mine, so you can see here the fact that the surface is not exactly very grippy at the minute, so I've put this nice replica of my boot on the side of the car. It's very easy to do. There, very odd surface. I don't know where this has come from. I've never seen this before. I've been filming here for years. Now, you've got a reasonably capacious boot. This car's previous owner, Dan, was a real handy man, so it came with no luggage cover, so it instead has this very nicely made hand-stapled piece of fabric, which works as a sort of basic tonneau cover. Even comes with a deck of French bridge cards and a cup holder. Basic back seats. For a Mercedes, it depressingly has a fabric interior, which is tragic. Pay no attention to the code reader which is in there. That's honestly a complete coincidence. But otherwise, it's actually pretty good in there. It's comfy, it's nice. I do often wonder who would spec a Merc like this. Now, it's got a 6-speed manual gearbox at 2-zone climate control, and neither zone works. But, that's fine. I think it does actually have aircon, it just doesn't work. A nice steering wheel, It is comfy. It comes with absolutely no history of any description. It was sold to my friend Dan as a car with a V5, which in the UK is the registration document, basically meaning the car is kind of your problem. Literally, that was handed to him pre-filled out, which is actually technically a big no-no. No sort of history or evidence of any kind of maintenance to this car ever, but it actually does drive and sound pretty okay, barring a small blow in the exhaust somewhere. But this car really impresses, and to explain that, we're gonna have to get it out on the road. Let's go. Now, one of the very fun things about this car compared to the Civic is that it is rear-wheel drive. Not that it can do much though. However, it does have about 170 horsepower hidden somewhere. And on the move, it's actually quite pokey, to be fair. Revs cleanly to about 6,000 RPM. Can't really hear the supercharger, and it's a very odd era of Mercedes, of these lower end but supercharged cars. I mean, you're never going to see this again. Mini were doing a similar thing at the time as well. The Cooper S had a supercharger on it. In truth, when you're in this thing, other than the fact that the aircon isn't working so it's bloody hot, this does feel like a really decent, quite nice car. Certainly far more than £300 worth. I've just filled it up with fuel, increasing its value by about 25%. That 6-speed box works nice and cleanly and crisply, and actually I've encountered brand new cars which shift a lot worse, so that's another real plus point. In fact, for a car of this era, I was really surprised that it came with a 6-speed box. Realistically, a lot of these cars would have been spec'd with the 5-speed auto that was very popular in the Merc world at the time. Fuel economy wise, and that is an important consideration, the car has been doing something along the lines of 38 to the gallon, albeit not when I've been driving it. Now that's on the motorway, which is where I am going to be driving the car most of the time. Now, it's had the stereo replaced with an aftermarket Pioneer unit that every time you start the car resets all of the stations and the time of day because it hasn't been wired in properly, and that's just fine. It also has the weird Mercedes handbrake system where you operate it with your foot to engage, and then you pull this lever thing down here to disengage. I'm not really a fan of that, but you know, it is what it is. Really though, slight exhaust blow aside, and I suspect that may be an exhaust gasket that's gone, the car sounds and drives quite well. The brakes do wobble a fair bit when you use them, so they're obviously warped and they are going to need replacement. Other minor irritations include the fact that you can't really indicate without engaging the windscreen wipers. Mercedes have combined the two on a stalk. Mercedes, for some reason, aren't really a fan of having a stalk on the right-hand side, so you've got one that kind of does everything, and there you go, put the indicators on and the wipers go on, because obviously a switch in here is worn or the stalk has gone, it's just got a little bit too sensitive, so you try and do anything and it just does that all the time. And if you actually want to get the screen cleaned, you have to hold it down for ages, and it kind of sometimes gives you some water and sometimes it doesn't. So a little bit random there, but these wipers do work fairly well, even if they're a touch on the squeaky side. So let's pull off and take it down a little country road and see how she does, because she has spent a couple of thousand miles doing motorway stuff, for which she's been actually an excellent car. There was only one incident where she threw an engine light, and we've diagnosed that, and that was a crank position sensor fault. We've cleared the error code, and since then the problem has not reappeared, so that's a good thing. I'm afraid I am going to have to put the window down just a touch because it is rather warm in here. Now, the car did venture onto the Autobahn briefly and recently, where it did a claimed 135 miles an hour. That's very, very impressive, and I didn't believe it at all until I drove the car, but you know what? I reckon she's got it in her. Torque figure is not particularly impressive. I think it's around 140, 150 pound-foot. I did look into what you can do to tune these cars, but there isn't really much you can do with the supercharged lump. You could sort of change the pulley a bit. Now, I did hear rumors that in other markets these are actually more powerful, around about 190 horsepower. This is the older 2-litre lump. They replaced it with a 1.8, which is supposed to be a bit more efficient, but I don't think either are going to win the awards for saving the planet, to be fair. Visibility is interesting. It's fine front and side. Out the back is not great because of the shape of that kind of sloping rear end. I've always been kind of interested in these cars for one reason or another. When I was younger and I was looking at buying my first sort of sporty car, I looked at buying one, but they were just a bit too much money at the time, and I never really thought I would actually wind up owning one. And you know, later on they were then a little bit too small when I needed a more practical car. But you know, they're a decent car. They really are. So there's that. It's quiet in here. It's well refined. Doesn't he have the sort of usual strange smell that one would associate with a 300-pound car? Certainly not a 300-pound Mercedes. Oh wow. E-Type Roadster. That indicate and wiper is not going to get old at all. Now, taking this down a little country lane, she is kind of softly sprung, and you do have to be a little bit wary because of those slightly duff tyres that are on it, but she does quite well. It's quite fun, to be honest, hustling something like this down a road, because if you wind up scraping it against a hedge or something, really it's not going to be any much of a problem to anyone. Gearbox is nice, throttle pedal works well. We actually took this thing through an Alpine pass in Austria, and she did quite well for the first few miles, but she did cook her brakes. But to be fair, it's the sort of road that cooks brakes in most things that aren't really geared up for that kind of road. This really handles this road very, very well. It takes the lumps and the bumps remarkably. It'll be helped by the fact that the small alloys have got very generous profile tyres on them, and the steering actually works quite well, to be fair to it. And there's not loads of feedback and stuff in it, but come on, it's a 300-pound running Mercedes. I do not expect miracles. Now, this car was found on Gumtree, and that's somewhere you probably want to look. If you're considering buying a car like this, it's a good place to look. eBay's great, and I have bought some fun cars off eBay, but I tend to find that because eBay's so popular, it does inflate prices somewhat. If you want a real bargain, now look elsewhere. Gumtree is good in the UK, and the USA, I guess you've got Craigslist and stuff like that. Also, Facebook Marketplace. Facebook Marketplace is amazing. Seriously, guys, like just look it up. It's really quite stunning. So that's another good place to try and source these kind of things. In terms of servicing costs, apparently this was serviced. I'm gonna do the brakes on it. I might see about fixing that annoying indicator type switch, but other than that, it's got oil in it. Doesn't seem to be drinking it very much at all, so I'm probably just going to run it. If I actually put that many miles on it, I will treat it to an oil change. But this is brilliant, cheap motoring. Couldn't really ask for anything better. So I want to thank Dan for selling it to me. They're awful tyres. And yeah, I hope you guys have enjoyed this brief look at a little slice of bargain car. Something a bit different from the more expensive stuff we've been seeing recently. So thanks for watching, guys. If you want to know anything about this car, please leave me a question in the comments below, and I'm sure to make another video on it. Until then, I'll see you for the next one. Bye bye.